Hello everyone, welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Wednesday, the 11th of June, 2025. My name is CareyHolzman, and today we're going to review yet another brand new offering from Minisforum that continues to innovate and offer options to people that, well, other manufacturers don't quite have the variety and assortment of both processor, RAM, graphics capability and price range that Minisforum does. And while other manufacturers may have, a budget line, a budget model, a mid-range model, and a high-end model or two, Minisforum has like 4 or 5 in every category, and then even going beyond that to like little mini gaming PCs, which are, well, the most expensive PCs you can buy are gaming PCs. And I love that they have just a variety, Intel or AMD, and at numerous price points, depending on what it is you need the computer to do or what you want it to do and what you can afford to have it do. Yesterday was Patch Tuesday, so there was a big cumulative update that came out, and if you haven't gotten it, it is a big update. It can take a little while, but definitely worth grabbing it. We will be reviewing the TerraMaster NAS that I had here because the review did not go as planned due to a mistake on my part where I was reusing drives that just coincidentally happened to be used in a TerraMaster NAS. And so we didn't go through the traditional startup sequence. As a result, I will be resetting the drives and redoing that review because I didn't expect it to go the way it went, and it was very puzzling to understand why things weren't going according to plan. But turned out, my bad, so I owe them a redo. So that'll be coming up, I don't know, if not later this week, then next week for sure. A shout out to Mark Gaines. I see he just renewed membership. Now a member 37 months. Right on. Thank you, Mark. He says hello to everyone. And yeah, I'm going to update you on a couple other things. We do have some items coming in. The folks over at Ugreen, we started negotiating about sending us their latest NAS for review, but then they wanted control over it. They wanted us to submit what we show you first to them. And you can't help but wonder what other reviews, if you watch other YouTube reviewers or even read reviews of the Ugreen product, how many of those people that did the review had to get a thumbs up from Ugreen before they were allowed to publish? We don't do that here. We've never done that. And so Ugreen then, well, we haven't heard back from them. When we said that we're not going to go back and forth until the video is okay with you, it makes me wonder, what are they hiding? What are they trying to control? So because of your generosity, our viewers and our community that are contributing in Amazon gift cards and other ways, super chats, your memberships, I just went on to Amazon and bought the damn thing for $600, and we're going to review it unbridled and untethered so I can determine for myself, well, we can figure it out together. What is Ugreen so afraid of? Why do they need that control? And then you have to wonder if every other review you saw on this was pre-approved before allowing you to see it. That scares me, and at the same time makes me very curious, because if a company feels very secure in their product, they should just send it to me, no differently than selling it to me. But if they're trying to control the narrative and they're even willing to pay for it, well, that's called making a commercial. Not that I'm against commercials, but it's just not what I do. If I genuinely am enthusiastic about a product, as you'll see time and time again, it's pretty rare I dislike a Minisforum product, although they're not immune from my criticisms either. It's not because I have to worry about consequences of payment or of further collaboration. This community and how we are different than other YouTube channels, most other YouTube channels, is we are not beholden to any corporations, and given those circumstances, we will not abide by them. So I'll give you an example. I went out to ASRock and I said, why are you guys setting the wrong PL1 and PL2 values on your latest chipset motherboards? And they said, we were told those are the defaults from Intel. And I said, those are not the defaults from Intel. The spec sheet says they're not the defaults. And they said, well, can you show us what you're looking at that is supposedly the official that we're not following, right? I mean, they didn't say it with the attitude, but I read it with the attitude, and I said, here you go. Here is the publicly accessible official spec sheet from Intel that is very clearly defining PL1 and PL2, and you guys are not acknowledging that at all in your predefined power profiles in your BIOSes. And they said to me, well, let me send this to headquarters and see what they say. And then he got back to me and he said, headquarters says they cannot share the document from Intel with you. It's an NDA, or a non-disclosure agreement, and they cannot share it with me, but they are following what the document says. Oh, and so is MSI and Gigabit and ASUS. Okay. So I said, I think you're lying. I don't think such a document exists, nor would an NDA exist on a product that's already been released. Non-disclosure agreements are usually there for pre-released products. In other words, that we want to release all the reviews all at the same time, so we'll give you the product early so you have time to review it, but you can't tell anybody. But on release day, or whatever day the company defines as when your review can go, then everybody else's review can go. And that's usually on the day of release or the day before the product's release. Once the product's released, the cat's out of the bag. Why would there be an NDA? I think they're lying. And I said as much. I said, I don't think you're being honest with me. I don't think such document exists or has ever existed. And well, I provided you the proof you've asked for to show you the official Intel spec sheet. You are telling me basically that's what the others are doing. That's all I'm hearing. Instead of actually showing me the document, you are telling me that this document exists because ASUS, MSI, and Gigabit also have the same power profiles. No, here's what I think is happening. I think it's the blind following the blind. I don't think any four manufacturers are following the specs. They're copying what the other one's doing. Well, if that's what ASUS is sending it to, that's what we'll send it to. And ASUS is saying if that's what ASRock sends it to, then that's what we'll send it to. That's what I believe is happening until I see evidence otherwise. There is no official statement from Microsoft that they claim exists but refuse to share with me that justifies their default power profile settings, and I don't like being lied to. So I said, give me a document number, because I'll reach out to Intel and we'll pull that document, or we'll find out if a document number even exists. Where did this come from? Is there a rogue Intel source that's got it wrong and everything they're telling me is right, but the rogue source is misunderstood the translation of the documents for their Asian counterparts? Or are they simply just copying what the other manufacturers are doing, and then when I call them on their bluff, they suddenly can't provide me the evidence of the verification or justification for these power profiles because it's an NDA? Well, isn't that convenient? An NDA, a non-disclosure agreement on a released product. Months and months after it's been released, and you can't share that with me. This might be something to bring to Gamers Nexus attention and let him go to work digging on this one, because something ain't right. Now, I don't know that they're lying to me. Maybe they're telling me the truth. I've never heard of such nonsense in my life. And why would Intel make different rules for manufacturers and hide them from the customers? Why would there be two different spec sheets, one for you and I and one for them? That's a very difficult thing to really think I'm going to believe that nonsense. So if that's truly what's going on, it needs to be made public and exposed. Intel should be embarrassed by it and correct it. If it's not what's going on, and if in fact ASRock, ASUS, MSI, and Gigabit are all just copying what the other one's doing, that should be exposed. So either way, we can get to the cause of this problem. And just saying it's an NDA and I can't show you the document, that is, as far as I'm concerned, a generic boilerplate response lacking any liability or responsibility or accountability that they can ask me for the document and I provide it. And then when I ask them for theirs, when they say theirs doesn't match that, well, show me what you're looking at. Oh, I can't. That's because I believe it doesn't exist. And as far as I'm concerned, they are lying. They're hiding something. And if they're not hiding something, then Intel is. And having worked at Intel, it seems highly unlikely with a company that big, with that many employees, that there wouldn't be a whistleblower. We're talking of tens of thousands of employees at Intel all over the world. If this was going on, I know the people I worked with, and I know the kind of people that work there. And among them, if there's a double standard, they're going to make sure that that information gets leaked. But it's possible I'm wrong. So, you know, I wonder why is it so important for Ugreen to maintain control and to get that reassurance before they send us a product to review? You understand where I'm coming from now, right? Like why I'm suspicious of that? So we just bought one at Amazon and we'll review it next week. Maybe it's good. Maybe there's no reason for this. Maybe it's just a control thing. But if you're going to spend your hard-earned money on that, you deserve to, you know, if you're looking for the information to make an informed decision about pros and cons, that's what I'm here to do. That's my job. And any company that interferes with my ability to do my job, we just work around them. We don't need their cooperation. I would like it. I would also like their trust. But I'm also not going to not review their product. And because of you guys and because of our community and those memberships, we just go out and buy it like you would, using our hard-earned money, or in some cases your hard-earned money, so we can do the work for the people who seek out this knowledge, that we can at least make it available. We can't force them to watch it. If they feel like they got burned for any reason, we could say, well, you know, you'd have known that if you watched the video before you made the purchase. So we've got that going on in the background. And I just wanted you to know that we should also have a little break in the construction for a week or so I can get some more work cut up here on camera. Johnny Weld says hello from South Korea. Right on. Thank you for joining us, Johnny. Mara mentions that she's been talking to Ugreen back and forth, and they aren't budging. And we're not going to wait. Whatever they're, you know, when you're having an email back and forth, and every day at least 2 messages go back and forth, and then 3 days goes by without any response, I don't know if they're having a meeting to discuss it, but I'm not sitting around waiting. We're not going to put ourselves on hold for them to hem and haw over whether or not they want to send us a product for free advertising for them. So we just bought it. And you know what? If they like the review, maybe they'll want that review earlier. In other words, we could have reviewed this 6 months ago if they had cooperated with us. So they're going to get a review 6 months late. It's on them, right? When do you want your review? Do you want it when I can afford to pay for it and buy it myself? Or do you want to provide me the product and I'll get to it sooner? If you're proud of your product, there shouldn't be anything you're worried about me finding. And I'll always find criticisms, but it shouldn't be, trust me, if this Ugreen comes in and I find out there's something about it that is like, you shouldn't purchase this, I will be as shocked as anybody. But I am looking for that. I'm looking for a reason why you shouldn't. Everything about it seems like a really good deal, so that's why this behavior, it's not adding up. It doesn't make any sense. So maybe a corporate culture issue. I don't know. But anyway, next week we'll get to it. Maybe even Sunday. We'll see. In the meantime, today we're looking at the Minisforum UM750L. Now, first, what I need to tell you is Minisforum is having their 5-year anniversary sale. And if we bring you over to the Minisforum page, which we have a link to in our video notes today, just go over here to my capture mode. Here we go. So here it says it's a 5-year milestone sale. And here it says it's an anniversary. And here it says it's a 5th anniversary. So I don't know, but it's a sale, okay? And the sale starts today. Effectively, they say it starts June 12th, but I believe they're 12 hours ahead of us here in the United States. That would make it tomorrow. In fact, according to this countdown timer, it was tomorrow 8 hours ago, or a little over 7 hours ago. So it's on. So this is the early access part of the sale. And then from June 18th to June 26th, it's a big sale. And then from the end of the month, whatever they have left is your last chance. Now, they're not paying me to tell you this. I think I like their products. If their products are even more aggressively priced and I don't share that information with you, what kind of a jerk am I? So I want you to know you can check out their deals, their promotions, and decide if, you know, if that's the final thing, like if it's finally at a price that you're like, hey, I can't pass this deal up. So today we're going to look at the UM750L Slim, but do know that $311 price there, if we go over to Amazon, it's a little bit cheaper at $309.99. But you also have to know, when you look at 138 ratings, these are the combined ratings of every product on this list right here. All of these. And when you're looking at the reviews, whenever you go to an Amazon page that has multiple products, you have to read right below the name of the person reviewing specifically what their review is about. There's several models on this page, and I don't like it when Amazon does this, but this is what they do. So this person is reviewing the 760 Slim. That's not what we're looking at. This person's reviewing the 760. This person's reviewing the 870. This is me. This is me reviewing the UM760. And if you remember, I put 2 NVMe drives in RAID 0. And look at those numbers I got. I had to share that on an Amazon review because that's crazy. By the way, I just said that's crazy, and it says this is crazy. I am pretty consistent, right? For me to leave another review is very difficult because Amazon says you've already reviewed the product. So it's very difficult for one person such as myself, or you for that matter, if you were to have bought multiple different models from the same Amazon page. If you were to buy the UM7, the 690 and the 750 and the 870, it may come up and put it all under one review where you have to edit. It'll say, well, you've reviewed this already. And then you have to put like update, this is for this model. This is where it gets confusing. And if you're not aware this is a typical normal Amazon behavior, when a manufacturer or seller wants to list multiple items, say in different colors, that's usually why that's done. But here it's completely different models and different price points. And then the reviews will specify which unit they're referring to. And then the other thing I look for is that the person leaving the review is a verified purchaser. And you'll notice, like, none of these, even mine doesn't say, oh yeah, it does, right here, verified purchase. So that means I'm not just like a competitor or a paid reviewer. I've actually purchased this from Amazon, right? That's how Amazon knows. So when I leave my review, or anybody else who really bought it from Amazon, this lets you know the value of that review versus somebody who bought one somewhere else but comes on Amazon to review it, or someone who didn't buy one at all and is trying to boost the company or take the company down because it's a competitor. Then you'll get reviews that that don't say verified purchase. That text will be missing, which I think was at the very top of the page. No, they do say verified. They all do. It may be that, like if we look at the 1-star reviews, I'm curious how many of those, no, it's not going to let me. It's just something to keep in mind when you're reading reviews for any product. Was it a verified purchase? Because if it was, it's likely somebody who actually has the product. It's more likely to be genuine. Okay, now, having gotten all that out of the way, what is it we're looking at today? We are looking at, when I close the page, well, we have the link in the video notes, but easy enough. We just go to Amazon and type in UM750L, and that should bring us up. At $300, what are you getting? Well, you're getting a machine that can really do gaming. Like, you could play the latest Doom, what's it called? Can't think of the name. This will play it. I mean, it may not play it at a really high frame rate, but absolutely playable because it's based on an AMD Ryzen 5 7545U. That's a 6-core, 12-thread processor. By the way, I didn't memorize this. I'm just reading what it says. 16 gigs of LPDDR5. Now, we already know what LP means, low power. How does it get to low power? The RAM is soldered on the board. Now, some of you go, oh, the RAM is soldered on the board. Oh, they took the lead out of the gasoline. It's not good anymore. This is the future, my friends. This gives you much better value, much higher quality RAM, and much faster RAM, and it's saving you money. No, you can't upgrade it, but why would you need to? That's good for the life of this machine. When this RAM is not enough, then the whole machine is not enough. Now, you can still buy machines that have socketable RAM, but you're going to pay more for them and they're not going to run as fast. That's your choice. This is the way things are moving because it makes sense. Now, when you see the word slim, that is already going to tell you you're not going to put a 2.5-inch drive in one of these. They're slim. They're not tall or fat. So there's no extra room in there for anything other than a second M.2 drive. They do give you that. And you also, are you sitting down? You get USB 4 on this. Yeah. There are machines that you can shop for on Amazon right now that are $600 mini PCs with Ryzen 7s or even Ryzen 9s that are only USB 3.2 Type-C. This is USB 4 Type-C. So at the $300 price point, you also get 2.5 gig LAN connection on this, which if we look around the back here and look at the ports, one thing you're going to notice is you don't get a lot of USB ports on this, like 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And then you have the USB 4, so that's what, a total of 5. But you can always buy a USB hub, or do you really need all these USB things you're plugging in? Keyboard and mouse, that's what the USB ports in the back are for, right? They're going to be 2 USB 2s in the back, if I get a picture of the back here anywhere, which I'm not seeing. And then 2 USB 3 up front, so that's where your flash drive and such can go. And then you can have 3 monitors hooked up to this if you want to use that USB 4 port as a monitor. If you also have DisplayPort and HDMI, you can run 3 monitors at the same time. So let's just take a look at this in person, because those pictures are very hard to decipher what the ports are on the UM750L. But I can tell you $310 is a bargain. Like, I'm not aware, and I've said this a lot, by the way, I am not aware of you getting more for your money. Minisforum has been leading that way, model after model, where even if the price doesn't change, what you're getting for the money is increasing. So now I don't know if we've got this version here at $350, and this version has 32 gigs of soldered on memory, and this is a Gen 4 NVMe, and I think that's the only difference. They're both Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, right? Yeah, so the only thing that's changing is the amount of RAM. So if you feel like 16 gigs isn't going to be enough for you, you cannot get any more than 32. To the best of my knowledge, that's it. Also, to the best of my knowledge, none of you watching this video use more than 32 gigs of RAM. You might feel like you do. You might, yeah, that's what I am, man. I'm a man. I use all my, no, you probably don't. And if you do, you probably don't want it on the $300 PC, right? If you need 64 gigs, if you need 128 gigs of RAM, you probably need a Threadripper or a Xeon or some, multi-$1,000 computer. Because don't tell me you need one and not the other. I'm not buying that any more than I'm buying ASRock telling me that they got a secret document from Intel that they can't share with me. Anyway, let me go back to camera 1. And let's do the unboxing here. In fact, can I get camera 2 on? Yes. What's interesting to me also is the way the box opens is different. Let me grab my glasses here. By the way, which one did I get? Oh, I got the little less expensive one. This is the 16 gig one here. I can't remember, 1632. So yeah, 16 gig, 1 terabyte drive, all the specs are right there. Now here it says tear to open on both sides, so we'll do that. You're seeing a real live unboxing, unscripted and unrehearsed. So if I get a DOA product, there's no way for me to hide that from you. I can't edit out mistakes. If the machine doesn't work or it's damaged, I can't edit that out, all right? Just so you know. One take, it's live. And that's the way we roll. Okay, there's the inside. There we go. All right, couple of USB 3s there. We've got our power button. We've got a recessed CMOS reset button. We've got our audio combo jack there, headphone, microphone, headset, 3.5 mil. Around the back, 2.5 gig LAN. HDMI, display port, USB 4, 2 USB 2s, and a standard 19-volt laptop-style external power adapter. Underneath, to open this up, you'd have to remove these feet. There are 4 screws. And then, yeah, there's a little arrow that says to remove here, and you'll just lift that tab up. And there is a small fan under here to keep your RAM and your SSDs cool, along with a heatsink. So when you take this off, be careful not to pull the power cable off the fan. I mentioned before why you should not be adding 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives in the mini PCs that allow you to do it, because you're trapping more heat, and more often than not, they do not have fans anywhere other than the CPU. So this area tends to get really hot. And Minisforum has already thought of that and added an additional fan here. I'm not a fan of the rubber feet because when you take these off, they never quite stick as well. And if you take them off multiple times, well, they're just not going to stick anymore. I wish that you could access the screws without removing the feet, and this is a common criticism I have with Minisforum. All right, but just be aware of it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I don't want you to be surprised if you decide to buy one. The point of these reviews is to make sure you have all the information to determine what's important for you that meets your expectations. Now, going below the little egg carton here, we have a piece of cardboard that separates us from some documentation, which, you know, I can't be bothered to read. We also have a US style, duplex style power plug here, which is pretty standard. And they give you a little plastic protector over those prongs that needs to come off. We have a standard small HDMI cable. They usually include this when you can mount the computer to the back of a monitor, and then that way you can go from, you know, a short HDMI cable just to the few couple inches it needs to get to your monitor. These cables are often too short to, you know, set it on a desk, but, you know, that's primarily why it's there. There's no rules that says you have to use it that way, but you probably want to. Let me verify my suspicions here. Yeah. So there's your VESA mounting bracket with screws, and that's of course to mount the bracket to the unit. That's what these 2 screws right here and here are for. And it says up, so that would go in this way. Well, that's interesting. Does it get in the way of the feet? There's no way that's up, because these holes are in the middle. It would have to go this way. It would have to go on. You see these holes here? They have to go to these holes here. And then these holes here would be what you connect to the back of your monitor, or, you know, you could even mount this under your desk, this mounting bracket. And then you would just slide the PC in and out through these keyhole slots. So I'm a little confused why it says that's up and this says this is up. Those would be going 2 different directions. I don't know if that's an oversight or just a misunderstanding on my part. But again, I'm going to point out little things like that. Oh, they give us a couple extra little rubber feet because they already know when you start opening it up, the feet aren't going to eventually, sometimes the first time, they won't go back on right. So I'd be a fan if they would just move the feet over a little bit, get out of the way of the screw, or put a hole in the foot that exposes the screw so that we didn't have to remove the feet. But we've been through this a lot of times before with Minisforum, and not just Minisforum. There's our power brick. This power brick is up to 65 watts, it says. 1.5 amps maximum, like so. And a standard barrel power connector. Nothing on this says Minisforum. It's another criticism. You cannot just simply plug this into another device that the plug fits. So if you're moving or you misplace and you've got a couple of these little power adapters laying around, don't guess. If you guess wrong, you could destroy the thing you're plugging it into, and you can destroy the destroy the power brick. So I will usually get out a little label maker or a Sharpie. And in this case, I have a silver Sharpie. And we know that we have a UM750L, so I'll just write on it. And I don't have the prettiest handwriting, but I'll tell you what, it beats having nothing. So I'll just write Minisforum UM750L. That way, if these two things ever get separated, I know for a fact where this goes. I think they should at least have a sticker or something. The thing is Minisforum doesn't make the power bricks. There's a company that makes power bricks. And then there's a company, Minisforum, that makes the mini PCs. I don't know why this is, but that's just the way the industry is. And because I think that's unusual, I want to bring it to your attention in case you don't already know. That's standard across the board. Sometimes, like with the big manufacturers like Asus, they will brand their power bricks. And on occasion, I've seen power bricks branded by other manufacturers, maybe even Minisforum, but it should be standard practice. It's one of the first things I check. I've got over 50 or 60 mini PCs here, and this will probably fit into about 40 of them. But it may only work with about 15 of them for various reasons. Not only that, of that 15 that it does, let me rephrase, of let's say 15 it doesn't work with, it could destroy finding out if it works or not. In most cases, you may have a machine that needs more power than this can deliver, and it simply won't turn on. You might get a light, things aren't running right, and they can burn up your adapter. It likely won't cause harm to the mini PC, but it's best you don't play games with guessing when it comes to power and anything of value you're plugging power into. I have to assume if you're trying to plug it in and power it up, it must have some value to you. So be certain when you get any new device, and this doesn't have to do with just mini PCs, it could be a lamp, could be a clock radio, could be a cell phone charger, label if the adapter has no manufacturer name on it that matches the product it goes with, then you label it, whether you use a label maker or a marker. A Sharpie marker in silver shows up on black, fantastic. And you know, for all I know, you're a calligrapher and your writing looks beautiful. For people like me, there's label makers. Okay. All right, so let's fire it up and see what it's like. I'm gonna just put the rest of this stuff back in the box where it was so we don't misplace anything here. But the specs on this for 300 bucks, are you kidding me? USB 4 and 2.5 gig LAN, and the graphics that are built in on that Ryzen processor are gaming worthy if you're not real, you know, if you're not somebody chasing frame rates and you want to turn every feature on, you're just going to have to spend more money. The very fact that it can make these games playable at all, even at 30 frames per second on, you know, games like Doom, for 300 bucks, are you kidding me? For you to buy an Xbox and then buy the Doom game or a subscription to Xbox Play or whatever they call it, you'll be spending close to $600, maybe a little bit more with sales tax. This is half that price, although the game is still 90 bucks. But regardless, you know, for everything else, like, you know, getting actual work done, this is no slouch. I can tell you just by the specs. So unless the specs are lying or exaggerated, this should be pretty darn fast. Let's give it some power and give it the beans and see what our first boot up is like. Let's see, power. I'm looking at a spaghetti of cables down here. Okay, power. Now on a first boot, I am not plugging in internet, but I do need video. So for that, I need an HDMI cable. We'll plug that in. And as you see, I'm using my own duplex power plug. The ones that come with this, I would have to unfurl the cables and stretch it out to the wall. But at least unlike a wall adapter, you get this extra length of cable. On the really cheap budget computers, sometimes the cables are 4 or 5 feet long, and then you need like a power extension if it's not going to reach. It can be challenging for me just to get it to the plug on the wall behind me on those units that are the budget units. But when you're paying 120 bucks for it, you know, for the whole thing, it's hard to complain. On the other hand, it'd be hard to complain at $300, and yet they're giving you a much better wall adapter. So you really do get what you pay for. In this case, I think you're getting more than you're paying for compared to what other competitors would charge. But you be the judge. Don't take my word for it, because you might think I'm biased, and maybe I am, but I already like it. I already know from past experience the quality of Minisforum. And again, they're not paying me to make the video. And let's just plug it in. So this is the Wi-Fi dongle for the keyboard and mouse, the wireless dongle. And I think that's all we need. We'll turn it on. Fires up. You see we have no shipping damage. We're not sent a bad product. Somebody gets a bad product, they think that the company was out to get them. There's some evil at work and they're going to leave a negative review. What is wrong with people? Sometimes bad things happen, but it's not normal. What you're seeing live, unscripted and unrehearsed, is really what's happening in real life. I got to go to my output of this, which is right here. Now, hopefully we'll get a signal here in just a minute. Your first boot up may take a little bit longer as it trains the memory, right? And let me go back over to the chat room, see what you guys have to say. Charlie Purdy joins us, says hello. Of course, our friend Mark Gaines and Patrick T. Patrick mentions a long time ago he guessed about which power adapter went with his, he was moving to a new residence and he had an Ethernet hub, and in the move, the power adapter got separated from the hub, so he guessed, and when he plugged it in, boom, device went, smoke and flames inside of it. I thinked quickly before setting off the fire alarm and threw it out the window. Yeah. Steve says, yeah, that's good advice on labeling the power adapter. It'd just be nice if the manufacturers did that, even for their own brand recognition. You know what I mean? But if they don't, you got to look out for yourself, because life gets busy, and this thing you're all excited about when it's fresh and new is something you won't give a second thought to when you're moving it around in 2 years. And then you go, whoa, which one of these was the power adapter, right? Now, did we boot? I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. Let me go back to what I was doing. Let me go full screen over here for me so I can see it the way you do. There it is. Okay, so English, United States, yes, that's what I want. And again, we have no internet access at this time where we're doing the setup same way as when we're building a new computer. We always go through the setup without internet access first. Keyboard layout is US, no secondary language keyboard. It wants to connect us to a network, but it can check I don't have internet, which is nice because that means they've already done the bypass NRO for you at Minisforum. Then I click accept on the license agreement. And I can enter the username of user and a blank password so it doesn't bother me for a password. And I turn off everything but the location settings. That will automatically fix any date and time. This probably has the date and time in Hong Kong or something, wherever it's made. Somewhere in China would be my guess. And you don't need to correct that by hand anymore, not in 2025. Let the computer take care of it for you. No correction, no human intervention, I should say, is required anymore. This is called the evolution of technology, and it continues to improve until it won't even need you at all. Okay, so be ready for that when that comes. In the meantime, it's going through its final setup phase, or what we call the OOBE, or out-of-box experience, which is your first, setup of installing Windows 11. This is no different than if I installed Windows 11 fresh and clean myself. I would go through exactly that same process. So the manufacturer here hasn't modified that, except for the bypass NRO that would require us to have a network connection, which I bypass, and I've talked about that using in my boot CD using Rufus. It looks like they're doing something similar. Bill Sony joins us, says hello to everyone. Welcome in, Bill. And Ghostly Lurker says hello. I also see Andy Kane and Mark Baggett joining us. There's Bajan Guy and Sean Skinner. Welcome in, guys. Ron Barnish joins us along with Scott and YTJ. Ray Cutt says hello. Good to see you, Ray. Dolman 2000, welcome in. And Linda joins us. 55 Stang Dude says hello. Gil Garcia and David Martinez join us, along with John Paul Bacon. Mark Gaines, renewed membership, now a member 37 months. Patrick Manny, also a member for 37 months. You guys rock. Art says hello. Welcome in, Art. And Gary Tatum. Am I getting everybody? I hope I'm getting everybody. Art said, I had a problem with this update. My computer took forever to restart for some reason. But it's a big update, and I would say that's probably normal. Sometimes it's best to not watch it update. Just set it before you go to bed or before you leave on an errand. Shut the monitor off and let the computer run. That's what I do. All right, so now we're at the desktop and I can plug the internet in. At that point, we can now go to Windows Updates. And then, of course, if everything's running well, we can begin to install our software and set up our email and our printers and plug in other USB devices. It's important you do the order of events properly, or you may have a very difficult time diagnosing problems. So by sectioning it off piece by piece as we progress forward, if our progression is stopped or interrupted, we know exactly what the last thing was that caused it, or the last thing that was successful, and it makes your diagnostic nearly instantaneous. If you choose not to do it that way, well, you could do it the other way and just hope for the best. But if things don't work out for you, good luck figuring that out without starting all over again. So that's why I do it this way. It's really about being consistent regardless of any unique challenges that a machine may present that, of course, I never expect. Right? I'm always ready to expect what I don't expect by limiting the unexpected to the previous thing I did. You do more than one thing, and then the unexpected occurs. Your challenge now is much greater than mine in determining the cause. Now, it looks like we're in 4K mode, so let's right-click on the desktop, and first thing I want to do is change those display settings to 1080 so I can read it. There we go. And then we're going to go to Windows Update, and we're going to start checking for updates. And I do expect there to be quite a few. Lord knows how long it's been since this left the factory, got on a boat, came to America, went to a distribution hub, sat in a warehouse, then I ordered it, it got put on a delivery truck, and then eventually delivered to my door. Right? That could be weeks or months. So there's always going to be updates. Like I said, there were updates last night. So unless this came off the manufacturing floor this morning, and they updated it to the latest, which likely isn't ever going to happen, you should expect there to be missing updates. The older the machine is, the more updates you should be expecting to miss, and the longer period of time you should be planning for all those updates to download, install, and then you reboot and look for updates to those updates. And you continue this until there are no more updates. Once you're fully updated, then you can go ahead and put your programs on, set up your emails, set up your printers, assuming that it passed everything successfully. If it hasn't, you stop where you are, get that fixed before you move forward. I like to turn this feature on, and I also like to turn these options on as well. And while we're waiting, there's a few other things we can check, which is to go down here, get rid of this little cartoon guy, search, S-E-A-R, search permissions, scroll all the way to the bottom for the last option under more settings and turn that off. And I don't want the monitor or the computer to go to sleep on me while I am live. So I will edit the default power plan just to check. And it's on never and never. I don't like getting interrupted with notifications. You might feel differently, but I will go to the notification bell, go to the notification settings, and turn notifications off. That's just my personal preference. When I right-click on the taskbar, I don't want to see Microsoft OneDrive. I don't want the task view. I don't want the widgets. And while I'm doing all this, Windows updates are still downloading in the background. Okay, so I'm just multitasking. I can look for other system tray icons. I want to see the Bluetooth device. I want to see Windows security. I don't know why you would hide that from me, because look, it's got a problem. How would I know when it's hiding behind this arrow that you never click on? So I'm going to go and click and see what the problem is here. Well, it doesn't like the fact I'm not signed into a Microsoft account, and it doesn't like the fact that I'm not signed into a Microsoft account. Why isn't it dismissing these? And then this, I don't know why it's not turned on by default, but you definitely, I recommend turning that on. And device security, again, sign in with a Microsoft account. I'm not interested in that. And I don't agree that this makes you safer. I think that if your Microsoft account gets hacked, you're not safer. If you don't have a Microsoft account, then you don't have to worry about that potential. On the other hand, by having one, it keeps an eye on things for you that you might not otherwise be paying attention to. So, like I said, there's pros and cons, and there's no right or wrong, but I just want you to have proper expectations on what you choose that fits your specific desires. And likely it wasn't letting me click on those before because some update was probably doing something that was working with Microsoft security. But we can go back to the Windows Update page and you'll see it's been downloading and installing 93% here, and then it'll install that, and then 0%. When this one starts, when this one finishes downloading, I expect this one to start, and then we will expect to have to do a reboot. While we're waiting, we can look at the system properties by right-clicking on the Start menu and go to System. We can verify our Ryzen 5 7545U and our 16 gigs of soldered-on LPDDR5 RAM. That is exactly what we ordered. That's what we got. Our Windows 11 is Windows 11 Pro, not Home, and our version is 24H2, not an older version like 23H2 or 22H2, which you might find for sale still at Amazon for older inventory products. And it's going to be a while to update those, but you might save a lot of money. So just bear that in mind. If you don't need the latest and greatest, you could buy something a little bit older that's still new, but has been sitting on a shelf for over a year and likely is missing a ton of updates. But once you do those updates, you're good to go. And then there's every second Tuesday of the month, Microsoft releases updates to Windows on a regular schedule. And that's just to keep you safe on the internet. If your safety on the internet is priority, you must keep your Windows up to date, or do not use Windows. Use literally anything else. Windows is the most popular platform used on the internet and therefore the biggest target for hackers. It's not because it's less secure. Whatever is the biggest target, it's always going to get the most attention. So one comes with the other. There's no getting away from it. If you're using something less popular and then everybody else does that too, then you'll be the higher target than Windows. Because when the vast majority of people, let's just say they switch over to Mac, or let's just say they switch over to Linux, then that becomes their target and not so much Windows anymore. If they got to put the same amount of effort in for viruses and hacking, they want the best return possible, like anybody else would for their efforts. So they'll always go after the masses, and the masses represent Windows. And it's not a fault of Microsoft that they're so popular. And so Microsoft does what they can to keep up with the hacking attempts, and that's why these updates are free, that's why they're frequent, and that's why they're so critical. If you care about your identity or your data, then you're going to accept those updates as soon as you're available to, you don't have to stop what you're doing. You can finish up, but at the end of the day or whenever you're done, that should be a priority to get that update installed. In my opinion, that's the professional advice. And again, if you get your stuff stolen or you get your data encrypted, that's not my problem. So I'm telling you how you can avoid a you problem. And if you don't want to listen to me, it's still going to be a you problem. It will never, ever be a Carey problem unless you pay me. All right, so you take that information for however you value it. Now, while we're waiting for the rest of the updates to install, I can grab my flash drive and copy some utilities over, such as Crystal Disk Mark, and ways that we can benchmark the system. So give me just a second, let me plug that in. And again, while updates are installing, we can multitask, so I'll just minimize that. We'll go over to our yellow folder here. Yeah, there's my flash drive with my utilities. I want CPU-Z. I want Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer. I want my Windows 11 network browsing fix. I want VLC. And I want, what else do I want? Under PC testing software, Crystal Disk Mark Portable. I think that's all I need. Now, yeah, there's Cinebench and all this other stuff, but for the most part, these machines are not meant to do that kind of work on a regular basis. Any computer can run Cinebench. Any computer the score you get in those performance numbers really only means something in your head, that you're associating bigger numbers to better things, when in reality it may make no difference whatsoever other than your imagination. It's like a placebo. If in fact you do have a requirement for big numbers in Cinebench, you're not buying the right computer. You need to spend, if that's important, closer to 1,000 or more for a computer that can, set benchmark numbers that are crazy. For the rest of us though, I can tell you right now, there's nothing about this Ryzen CPU, the specific one that we have, that will make it any slower or any faster than another similarly equipped Ryzen CPU model of the same make and model. They're all the same. I don't know why people get so obsessed with what I consider to be total nonsense. This is a Ryzen 5 7546U, 46, 45, whatever it is. Like, it's really small words. And it's going to perform 7545, like any other mini computer with a Ryzen 5 7545. Now, if you're somebody that's willing to set higher voltage limitations than what the manufacturer recommends because you can get 7% more performance out of it, I'm not telling you not to. I'm telling you, I don't do that. I think it's a silly waste of time, and no human being would ever care a rat's behind about 7%. But when I say no human being, I'm talking about in my reality of real world customers and real world computer usage. And if you're one of those people that cares about such tech minutia that you're willing to go in and do that to your machine, you'll do it without me. Because I'm telling you, under the same circumstances, any machine with this CPU will run exactly the same performance numbers, because that's all the CPU can do. A Minisforum Ryzen 5 7545U will not run faster or slower than anybody else's mini PC or mobile platform with a Ryzen 5 7545U. So if that's important to you, you likely shouldn't be buying a machine of this caliber. You should be spending $800, $1,200, $1,500, and then you can be that person, in my opinion. I don't feel that somebody at this price point can look a gift horse in the mouth and say that's not good enough. Because unless you've got something better, in other words, something that is faster than this and the same price or less, then this is as good as it gets right now in 2025 at that $300 price point. As far as I know, you cannot get more for less. If you know of something that gives you a better processor or a faster computer for this same amount of money from any manufacturer, even if you build it yourself, please bring that to my attention. You shouldn't be keeping that secret. Share it with the rest of us. I'm trying to say. So if you're saying this isn't good enough, well, compared to what? Compared to a $500 computer? Or compared to another $300 computer? That's all I'm trying to convey to you. So let's see, what was I doing? I remember. I want to go back to my projector over here. Close this out. Let's take a look at MS Info. We'll make sure that, we'll check Secure Boot status. MS Info, and under Secure Boot, what are we getting? It's on. We can check our activation status by simply going to the word activation. And we can see if we're active, so that we're already activated from Microsoft. What else can we check? Go back to MS Info, make sure we're in UEFI mode, which is pretty much every machine nowadays. But for a while there, we were checking them because during the changeover, we had a little of both. But if everything's configured correctly, we see UEFI, we see Secure Boot, we see activation is taken care of for us. Yeah, everything is just checking all the boxes. And I want you to remember, I would expect that the same on a $1,000 computer or even a $120 computer. These are standards that I expect. If these standards are not set, you might be able to get the computer for a little less money and do it yourself. On the other hand, they could also be charging you more and still not do this. So buying from a reputable manufacturer and a reputable seller is important in my line of work because it's a reflection of me to my customers. They're trusting me, and I don't want to just dismiss their trust. It's important that I maintain my integrity and people can trust me. A lot of people can offer advice, and then when things go sideways, you can't talk to them. You don't have contact information for them. They don't want, even if you could reach them, they tell you too bad. I wouldn't take advice from those people. So when customers are paying me for my services and my services do not meet their requirements, guess who they're calling and guess who they're expecting to make it right at no further expense? Me. And since I don't make much money selling computers, all it takes is one of those calls and I'm already losing money. And if they have to call me more than once, I'm probably losing that customer and all future business with that customer because they're going to be fed up at the inconvenience that what I sold them is not working or not meeting their expectation. That's 100% on me. It's called responsibility. And it seems like it's getting harder and harder to find individuals who will take any responsibility. So whenever you're listening to content creators or reading articles online, you've got to ask yourself, what liability do they hold if it causes you financial or physical harm? If that thing you buy has a bad battery that burns down your house, who can you go after? Well, when it comes to YouTube and it comes to articles online, nobody. So at the end of the day, you're held responsible for your own decisions. And yes, maybe you can go after a manufacturer, perhaps, but that's more of an insurance company thing. And the idea is that when you're dealing with somebody, especially local, and somebody that stands behind their work, they may not be the cheapest price. And if they were, how long do you think they're going to be in business? So you're going to get what you pay for and set your expectations accordingly. If you want to get everything as cheap as possible, you can throw your service out the window. If you want good service and good value, then you don't want the cheapest price. You want to make sure the person you're buying from is going to be around to help you or provide you with even more equipment when it comes time to replace it, or if you have any problems. But if they're just squeaking by and you think it's great that you're getting such a cheap price that it puts them out of business, you just did that to yourself. Forget about the other guy. You made sure that you did what you could to take them out of business. And if you want to, you can go to a swap meet, you can go to a garage sale, you can get stuff real cheap there. And I bet you won't be expecting any service or warranty, will you? So it's like consumers, they make up rules as they go. And it's all defined by price at the end of the day. So if you want something built well with a company that backs up their products, Minisforum isn't the only mini PC manufacturer I recommend, but they definitely have one of the longest reputations and the biggest variety of mini PCs to pick from. And so for me, look, people love options. Whether it's the size, the noise, the color, the number of USB ports, each individual customer deserves exactly what they want to pay for. If they want to pay to say, look, I need 4 HDMI ports, we can get them a machine with 4 HDMI ports. Maybe not from Minisforum, but maybe we can. Or we can use USB adapters. There's lots of ways to get that customer to multiple multiple video ports. In fact, a single display port, I think that one display port will power or display 3 different screens off that one cable. That's a whole nother thing for another day. Something I haven't explored because DisplayPort is primarily used in businesses. Most people don't have it on the back of their monitor, and you certainly don't have one on the back of your TV. Not likely. So I don't know how beneficial it would be to have people switching over to DisplayPort for multiple monitor use. Most people don't even use multiple monitors. But be that as it may, I provide the information for you to explore deeper if it's of interest to you. I'm not here to get into depth into everything I talk about because I am concerned about making sure we have enough time to talk about the mass sort of general knowledge that people want. And then when it comes to the tech minutia, I may throw a little dabble of that here and there, but it's really just the appetizer. If you want the full meal, you've got Google. And you can go get that information that you specifically want, but the rest of us could care less about. All right? So I'm trying to find the balance here for the bulk of the audience, not for any one individual. But having said that, as you, as an individual, are watching, if you have questions for me, please do ask me. And if I can provide the answer or provide a link to point you to the answer, because let's face it, sometimes people ask questions and the answer is an hour long. In that case, let me just provide you to a link and then you can spend an hour on it while the rest of us can move on. I'm more than happy to do so. And our community in the chat is also happy to help you. And many times they have better answers, faster and more accurate than my own. Not always, but enough that I wouldn't dismiss their suggestions. All right? And we're all here to just help each other. Zen Carter says hello. Fluffy Nuggets saying hello. There's Lawrence Pierre. Says it's a hot day in Massachusetts. How are you? It is hot. In fact, we have a big extreme heat warning this weekend at 115 degrees Fahrenheit already. And again, this will go on through September at the very least. So for all of June, July, August, July and August, they start getting really humid, and so we get the heat and the humidity, and it's miserable. Then the humidity starts to dry up, and you're back to just the heat throughout September. Somewhere around mid to late October, we should be back down into the 90s. So I will be strapping in for this brutal summer, and eventually, maybe someday, have a house maybe in Michigan that I can run away to in the summer. All right, let's see what else you guys have going on. Steve says, with the UM750 Slim, I paid $289 with a $30 off coupon, and after tax it was $319, same price as that. This is $309, not $319. So you paid $10 more, but I don't know how it's spec'd out. There's probably a $10 difference, but with the coupon, it's hard to know, you know, if they maybe gave you a little bit more for your money. As long as you're happy with your purchase, you feel you got a deal, then I'm happy. I just don't want any negative surprises. Fluffy Nugget said these come with Windows 10 Pro already, Windows 11 Pro already installed. Yes. Yes, they do. Scott says this is nicely set up at this price, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. I will focus on the budget machines because that's all most of our viewers can afford for whatever reason. They sell like hotcakes. We'll sell 50 $130 computers for every 10 $300 computers for every $1,000 computer. So you've got quantity and you've got quantity, and we don't want to alienate anybody. So I do try to cover the gamut and make sure that you guys know, at least know what's out there, and then you can buy what's ever appropriate for you, regardless of your reason, and know what to expect and not be surprised by what shows up or how it performs or whether or not you get any support, et cetera, et cetera. All right, let me jump back over. Are we done with our updates? Let me see. No, still installing, so we'll check back in a minute. Andy says just come to Ireland for the summer. I'm not opposed to that. I'd be okay in Ireland. Twist my arm. And Mark Baggett said Massachusetts is a great place, especially in the spring and fall. Yeah, I wouldn't know. I've never been to New England. Gary Rockcliffe says hello, watching from Australia. Good day, Gary. Do they use gas in Australia like they do in England? Good day, Gaz. FN Trojan Sport says, I bought a mini PC for my elderly parents and they love it. Thank you for your recommendations. I think a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at mini PCs thinking there's just no way that's any good. Then you put one in front of them and say, well, show me what's not good about it. And then after you pick their jaw up off the ground, job done. Sometimes you just have to experience it. Galena said, is there a way to find out which Windows 10 update installed the Microsoft 365 Copilot on my PC? None of my Googled solutions work. Why does it bother you? Just don't use it. Who cares? What is it you're trying to fix? You just don't like looking at the icon? Just remove the icon. It's just going to put it back on again. You're never going to win this fight, and your Windows 10 support's going to end in October. I mean, unless you're paying for extended support, but I promise you, they're just going to put it back on again. So what's the problem having the 365 Copilot that you're trying to resolve? And then I can probably get you to that resolution in a much easier way, more permanently than what you're thinking of, because that's a temporary solution at best. Alvin Shaver says hello. Ruzmir Janovic says, I am from Bosnia, Sarajevo in Europe. Welcome in. I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name, but I'm not doing it on purpose. It's the best I can do. I have no idea how that's supposed to be sounded out. And forgive me if I've butchered it. Welcome in. Zen Carter said Canada weather's starting to look like Arizona this summer. They're calling for massive heat waves in the coming weeks. Oh, I don't think it'll compare. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. Ruzmir said, I have a raw format hard drive. I want to recover data from it. That can be a challenge because there is some software out there that claims to do data recovery, and it's not all good. And you don't want to install any software while that drive is attached. So you would need a second computer that you would install drive recovery software on if you want to try like Recover from Piriform. It's going to cost you some money, one way or the other. Even the shareware free stuff will only do so much. Then look, nobody's doing all this work to help you for free. There's no way, because if they did that, they wouldn't have a recovery software anymore. Somebody's got to pay for the website, somebody's got to pay for the development, and while they're doing all that, they probably have to pay the rent and electricity just like you and me. And even if it's like a little GitHub community project, it usually loses steam when the main person gets burned out and says enough of this, because the public will grab everything for free until there's nothing left and walk away leaving an empty husk of the person who was trying. So do expect to pay money for something, but just because you pay money for it doesn't mean it's going to work. So if it's really important to you, you should find a professional data recovery service. The one important thing I can tell you is you never want to make changes to that drive. So if you want to try some free shareware, I would start with Recover from Piriform, install it, and then take your drive that's not working correctly and hook it up through USB. But don't do that while installing any software. And don't try to repair the drive. You want to extract off of the drive onto a different location. And the reason is, if the drive is failing and you start making changes, then you could just end up burning the drive out completely and causing more damage, or overwriting other areas that are marked as blank to save the files you're recovering onto the drive you're recovering from, overwriting data you haven't recovered yet. So you always want to move the data to another format. May I ask why, if this data was so important, you did not have a backup? I'm just curious what's going through the minds of people that you should ever need to do a recovery outside of recovering a backup. Did you think that you were immune? Did you not know what a backup is? Did you know you were supposed to do it and never got around to it? Help me understand what got you in this position so we can all learn from it, please. Please, please, please. As I'm talking till the cows come home and people still aren't making backups, and people keep on sending drives to recovery. It's a lot of money, it's very risky, it's very slow, and you could do it yourself for free if you just had a backup. So I just want to know what reasoning you have for not having a backup, if it's that important to you that you need to recover it. And then that way, when I emphasize to people how important it is, maybe your reasoning is what I need to explain to people to get it through to them. I feel so bad when people want to recover data. There's no excuse to ever need to recover data in 2025. There's no excuse. You've got cloud storage, external drives are cheap, and making duplications of important files has been an important thing
since the very first computer I ever turned on back in the 1980s. If anything, it's only gotten more important. And I'm not here to embarrass you, and I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm here to, I want to understand how you got in this position. Rosemary says, thanks on services, but I just recover using software programs. Yeah, I mean, what programs have you had luck with? I mean, you've done this more than once? I understand the first time, but a second time, third, fourth? At what point do you start making backup? I'm very confused. Zen Carter said hard drives are crazy cheap these days. I bought an 8 terabyte hard drive for $130 last year. Rizmir says, I mean a data for reinstalling Windows, like Office, Windows ISO, or something else. Well, I can't read your mind. I don't know what it is you specifically are wanting to reinstall. ISOs and software don't need to be recovered. You just re-download them from the manufacturer for free. So if you are having difficulty finding a Microsoft Office ISO, I promise you, you can get it directly from Microsoft at no expense. It's the product key you've got to pay for. You will not be able to recover, likely, I should say, not be able to reuse a product key. Once it's been activated on a system, it likely won't activate again. If you were to tie any Microsoft product keys with a Microsoft account, different story. You know how I'm always bypassing the Microsoft account? Well, one of the downsides of me doing that is all of the registered software that I've used product keys for on a specific computer would be associated automatically without my choice to my Microsoft account, including Office 365. So once I install or reinstall Office 365 and sign back into my Microsoft account, the product key is automatically reassigned and reactivated. So that is a positive side. Remember, I'm always talking about pros and cons. It's not always just whatever way the content creator is leaning, because I will tell you the way I'm leaning and why, but I'll also tell you, you might want to lean the other way than me, and that's okay too, but set your expectations so that they align with the way you're leaning, and then you won't be surprised. Find me in Hawaii. That's Ken. Ken contributes $4.99 in Super Chat. He says, I'm just dropping in to say hello whenever Carey says I agree. Aloha from Ken Chong. How often does that happen? All right, let's go back over to the, I think this should be done updating. Let me just check it. Yes, it's waiting on me to hit restart. So again, if you have other questions for me, especially questions regarding the mini PC, but any tech-related questions, ask away in the chat room, and myself, along with the community, will do our best to help you. But sometimes we have to ask you questions to understand your question or the depth of it. And a lot of times we're just trying to figure out what your goal is. Like, how do I fix this? Well, what's wrong with it? Instead of telling me what you want to fix, tell me what the symptom is. You get what I'm saying? Like, instead of asking, how do I stop OneDrive from loading? What's the problem? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, I don't want OneDrive to load. No, why? What is coming up, or what is the issue you're trying to resolve? Because it may have nothing to do with OneDrive, or it may not have anything to do with uninstalling it, because once again, Microsoft's simply going to put that back on with another update. So there's other ways to accomplish your goal, but you're not telling me what your goal is. And it really helps a lot for me to understand the best answer to your question. So instead of asking me about, you know, a specific, what's the torque settings of a spark plug on an 87 Ford Thunderbird, why do you want to know? What is it why do you think the torque settings matter? Like, I'm trying to figure out, well, it sounds to me like you're trying to fix something that ain't broken, and you think that's going to fix your problem, but I'm not aware of that fixing any problem. And that's just an example of why I need to understand. Well, the car's misfiring. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, now I understand. and forget the whole torque settings on the spark plugs, you're wasting your time. Let me redirect you to how to fix that. Fred Zlotnick says, I bought a Minisforum UM450 as a spare 3 years ago for $300, and it uses a Ryzen 5. It works perfectly for almost everything, and I don't game. It's fast and smooth, and it's perfect for a spare. I totally could see that. I could also see it used as a main machine. What's a spare for you may be better than some of the main machines people are using to watch this video right now. So that's a pretty nice spare. That's what I'm getting at. Joseph Hawkins says, sounds like he wants to reinstall Windows. Yeah, but you don't know that. You're making an assumption. So you can go through answering that question to detail only to find out you just wasted your time because that's not what they're trying to do. And what does that have to do with a raw hard drive and data recovery? These are two entirely very different questions. So instead of assuming what somebody means, get clarification, unless you just like spinning around in circles. And maybe some of you do. But I would prefer to not overwhelm somebody with unnecessary information that is irrelevant and unrelated to the problem they're trying to solve simply because they haven't been clear on what it is they're trying to do. Once I understand what your goal is, then I can provide a much clearer, more relevant answer, usually. Not always, but usually. Let's get back over to this machine. Has it rebooted yet? Oh yeah. All right, let's go back over to full screen for me. Let's get VLC put on here. We also need to, once again, check for more updates, but let's just get this out of the way. It's a free open source media player, and I will remove all of Microsoft's free media players that come with Windows. I don't like them, and it's just my personal preference. I do this for all my customers because I don't want support calls about why videos or music won't play when they're getting it from unusual sources. If VLC won't play your video or your music, you likely have a virus file or a corrupted file. The problem won't be with VLC. And if you insist on playing it and you end up getting a virus and all your data gets encrypted, maybe you'll understand why I prefer VLC. Maybe you won't, I don't know, but sometimes you just gotta have the experience for some people. I'm gonna run the optimizer real quick. We stick with all the default values, so all I have to do is hit apply. And then you'll see a bunch of access is denied. You'll see the mic or this PC icon is added to the desktop. That's my preference. I like to have it there. And then it's going to want to reboot for, you know, things like turning off hibernation and other optimizations that I prefer to take effect. We're not making any registry changes that you can't just click a box in Microsoft Windows. It's just doing it much faster and more consistently than me remembering to click every box or, you know, go to the different settings within Windows. We're not creating new registry keys, and we're not circumventing Microsoft's recommended configuration options. When you see other YouTube channels and they're telling you to create new registry keys or the only way to make a change is to go in the registry, that's sketchy. And that often has very long-term consequences that you will never, ever relate to your change. So people set things and they forget. They completely forget. Or it never occurs to them that that thing that the video content creator suggested they do to make their games go faster is the reason why their scanner stopped working. And they just realized, my scanner stopped working. Well, when's the last time it worked? I don't know. Well, chances are the last time it worked was before you made a modification that some blameless, irresponsible YouTuber or Redditor or forum poster suggested you should do. And then you did it and you said, wow, this works. And then you found out, wow, there's consequences. Or you got consequences and you just think it's bad luck. Most of the service calls I get called out on today are user created. If the users leave the computers to their default values, they very rarely ever have problems. Now, if you don't mind problems, accept that, you know, when you have them, you probably caused them. And you and I will be fine with it. But don't tell me, oh, Microsoft Windows sucks because you thought you were going to be smarter than everybody else because some content creator convinced you. And then the content creator holds no liability, owes you no money for all of the inconvenience. You'll end up reinstalling Windows to fix the problem and say it was a Windows problem. You will tell yourself anything but accept responsibility. And I'm telling you, most computers I fix today are user-created problems. I'm paid the same, whether it's an actual problem or the user created it. You want to pay me for work that I never needed to do if you would have left it alone? I'm okay with that. But I don't want to hide that from you. I want you to know, hold yourself responsible. If you're going to go down that path, you can't blame the person who told you. Because at the end of the day, you made your decision. Accept your consequences. You might think, oh, the immediate response is positive. But over time, you might start having other issues you never had before. And it will never occur to most users that all those things that are happening later are a consequence of the things you did months earlier that you've all forgotten about. I had a conversation with a friend. And the friend says, I got this wonderful piece of software. It's so cool. It tells me anytime my internet is down, and it logs it so I can look for patterns. And it's the weirdest thing that every single night at 3 o'clock in the morning, my internet goes down for exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds and comes back up. And isn't it weird that my internet service provider is taking my internet down every night at exactly the same time for exactly the same amount of time? I said, that's not what's happening. Well, yeah, I got the logs. I'll show you. No. Let me tell you what I think happened. I think from time to time, when you have an internet outage, you call support and they tell you to unplug your router. Wait a second, wait a minute, plug it back in, and then your internet comes up. And then somebody told you, or you saw a video, you got some information that you can set a reboot schedule on most routers. And you probably thought, hey, if I can have the router reboot itself automatically, then the odds of me having to reboot it from being on constantly, I shouldn't have to do it anymore, if at all. So I don't remember doing that. I said, well, do you remember having internet problems? Yes. Do you remember being told to unplug the router and plug it back in from time to time? Yes. And if you were going to set up a schedule, would you have it happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, or would you have it happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Oh, I would 3 o'clock in the morning sounds good. I'll always be asleep, so that's the best time. I said, well, there's one way to know. Log into your router, look under your scheduled tasks, and see if there's a scheduled task to reboot every day at 3 a.m. He's like, hold on a second. And then I hear, shoot. Hate it when you're right. I love helping people. It's not like rubbing anybody's nose in anything. It's like, yeah, I know. I get this a lot. People are so convinced this is the ISP. It's not me. I didn't do it. Most of the problems I fix, the user has caused. And that doesn't matter if the user is tech savvy and they consider themselves, you know, the greatest technician that ever lived. They are not beyond mistakes. In fact, if they're not making mistakes, they're not learning anything. They're just repeating something over and over again. And, you know, we can train a monkey to do that. So mistakes are good. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. And I don't mention these examples to embarrass anybody or to make them feel bad. I'm trying to convince you what I'm telling you is real. This just happened. It literally had this conversation the other day. You don't need to know who it was. It doesn't matter. They're a human like you and me. And they're as susceptible of those mistakes as you are and I am. And sometimes it just takes somebody to shake you and go, stop looking for blame from somebody else. You've got to look first in the mirror and imagine, what could I have done to cause this problem? And in most cases, I am saving you a lot of time. In most cases, I am saving you from having to call a professional. If that's where you start, you will likely get to your solution faster. But the minute you say it's not my fault, it's the ISP, it's the modem, it's whatever you want to point the finger at, you're going off on a trail that leads you nowhere. Most of the time, in my experience, the solutions are undoing what the user did. It's not an insult. It's just an observation. You do with that information whatever you want. I'm paid the same. In fact, it's actually in my financial benefit if you don't know this, so I can continue to generate more work that doesn't need to be generated because people won't leave things alone or won't consider that they caused the very problem that once they're made aware of it, they wouldn't have to pay me for. They could do it themselves. You see what I'm getting at? So my heart is in helping people, not in generating a profit. And that's why it's important we have members here. Seriously. All right, I think did we reboot? I can't remember. Let's go back over and see where I was. We're going to go to full screen over here for me. There it is. And we'll do settings, Windows Update. Retry these two updates here. That's pretty normal. Nothing to worry about. If you have an update that has to retry more than twice, something's wrong. But sometimes the same update is trying to install twice, and one will succeed and one will fail. And people think there's a problem. There isn't. Just leave it alone again, and when the next time you check for updates, it self-corrects. So you don't have to get into your registry, and nor should you. You shouldn't be using uninstallers beyond using the apps section unless you have a particular app you're having difficulty with, in which case, in that scenario and with that exception, then in that one time you can use an uninstaller, but that should not be your routine to download a third-party uninstaller and install it just so you can uninstall things. Because if you're trying to uninstall things, why would you install something to uninstall things? Sometimes I get hungry while I'm eating, Carey. Okay, I had that full meal and man, am I hungry after that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. All right, I got a thing for things making sense. What can I tell you? Do you have any questions about this mini PC? Any concerns, anything you'd like me to cover or address while we're here reviewing it? Since I'm waiting on updates, it doesn't do me any good to run any benchmarks until we make sure we have all the latest updates on it. Given that it's AMD, I would also put the AMD Adrenalin software on. Very rarely does that ever come with a machine. Like, they'll get the chipset drivers, but not necessarily the Adrenalin software. The Adrenalin software is free. I would download it. I can't see it causing any harm, and if anything, it give you a little extra performance. Once we get all that installed and we want to benchmark things, then we're doing a fair, accurate benchmark versus older drivers that may be hindering us or not having the latest updates that could be hindering our test results, making the test results invalid and off the table. Roosmare said, yesterday I bought a Mercusys AC1900 wireless router and I attached it to my modem and it got very good and fast Wi-Fi on 5 and 2.4 gigahertz all around the house and outside in the garden too. I don't think we have that brand in the United States. But for others watching in Europe, that might appreciate that. But he says, my internet service provider installed a 5 gigahertz modem, which was losing the Wi-Fi signal. He said 4K resolution and full HD are playing on devices, and what's most important thing, the TV, smart TVs and Android boxes, PC, laptop, smartphone router. Obviously, the router you're going to get from your internet service provider is very generic. But if it's not performing, you have the ability to call your internet service provider and complain. It's part of the service you're paying for, and require them to come out and make it right. Or you could just do what Roosmare here has done and simply just buy your own router and be done with it. And then just disable the Wi-Fi part of the modem, at least parts of it that can be disabled, so you avoid any further Wi-Fi congestion in your house or your apartment, so you have a stronger, more reliable signal from your other router. But I promise you, you're not getting the best router from your internet service provider. You're getting a generic average router, and that's all most people need. If it doesn't meet your expectations, you call and complain. They'll make it right. Or you just skip them altogether, do what you did, and buy your own router, and then solve the problem. But it also means that when your internet goes down and you call them and they find out you're not using their router, they're going to tell you it's not their problem. They don't know other manufacturer's router. They couldn't help you if they wanted to. So that also makes it more difficult to get any service, because they're going to immediately get you off the phone by saying, you're not using our router. We don't honor or support other people's routers. You go to them. You call them, they'll say, well, we don't make that modem, and we don't know if it's the modem, so you go to them. If you get everything from one provider, you have one phone call, and they cannot say it's not them. In other words, it's their equipment that's not working to the way that they've advertised it, and you're paying for it. They are obligated to fix that. But the minute you go out on your own, prepare to be your own support. And if you're okay with it, you also can save any additional money of rental fees from the ISP that will long more than pay for your new router. So do know there is a cost, right? You want to be your own support, you could save a lot of money and get things done faster. If you want to deal with the person you're paying money to, that's partly what you're paying them for, and you can hold them to account until it's fixed. It might take longer, but it won't cost you any more. Either way, just know what to expect. Let me take a quick look over here on what we're doing. How are we progressed? Still installing. Okay. Find me in Hawaii says Continental Service, Carey Wick. There's a Continental John Wick joke in there somewhere, but I'm not quite sure I understand the reference. He says, I'm going to catch up later. Thank you for a great time. Until next time, see you soon. Mahalo, Ken. Thank you for hanging out with us. Scott said that's a nice PC for someone who needs to update to Windows 11 and has old hardware. Be a nice PC for me. You're kind of making it out like it's basic. I couldn't disagree with you more. When I'm showing you the budget PCs for like 120 bucks, those are basic. Those are a nice upgrade for someone who's got older hardware. This is a level above that. And I think anybody would be very happy with this. The only downside I could see somebody complaining about would be there's not enough USB ports. There's only 5 USB ports on this. So if we're going to use one for the flash drive and one for the keyboard and mouse, that only leaves us 3. So if we plug in a printer and we plug in, I don't know, a YubiKey or something, and we're down to 1, and if we're using that one to power another monitor or to send a monitor signal out, that's all 5. On the other hand, flash drive is meant to be removed, so then that would free that up from time to time. And you shouldn't need more than 1, I would imagine, in most scenarios, where you're constantly plugging and unplugging. You could also buy a USB hub, but for the additional money you're going to spend, you might just be better off buying a higher end or a different model of mini PC that can accommodate your unusual need for more USB ports. The vast majority of people don't use more than 3. If you're using more than 3, your configuration is not common. Doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but you are not a part of the masses. And that's fine. But understand, if you're shopping for the masses, if you're looking at this and you're criticizing it doesn't have enough, you have unique needs, not generic needs. And so for people like that have these specific requirements, then they need to pay accordingly for that additional outside of the norm requirement, just like anything else. Very reasonable. Not everybody's reasonable. Some people think that should be what I need it to be. Nobody knows what you need it to be but you. But we can tell you overall, most of the people that buy these, this has more than USB ports than they're going to use. And the entire ownership of it, that's why they sell so many of them. And if they don't sell one to you, they don't really notice you didn't buy it. See what I'm getting at? They didn't make it for you. They don't miss you if you're not buying it. And if you're that particular, why are you looking at something that doesn't meet your needs? Why would you blame the manufacturer? That's on you for looking at the wrong thing. So again, people, more and more, they will not accept responsibility. And it's frustrating for me as a tech to have somebody maybe turn their nose up at something, which is kind of how I read that. Like, oh, well, that's fine for a beginner. I completely disagree with you. But, you know, it is what it is. You're welcome to your opinion. And he may not have meant it that way. It's just the way I read it. Okay. Just so we're clear. Kenneth Brown said, I'm 100% satisfied with my Minisforum UN1250. It's a great machine. Patrick T said, I'm using more than 3 USB ports on the keyboard, mouse, UPS battery, backup, a headset, and USB-C Creative Pebble speakers, and an external Western Digital hard drive. So he's got 6. Yeah. And they do sell computers that have 6 or more USB ports. So if you needed that and you were looking at this and you turned your nose up at it because it's not good enough for you, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you have an extraordinary, unusually large amount of USB devices. Nothing wrong with that. And you can buy a USB hub to accommodate it, or you could simply buy a computer with more USB ports on it and pay the difference so that you can have whatever you want to no limits other than your wallet. Scott says he's got an Ace Magician T8 Plus. He loves it, and it's more than nice. Yeah, the T8 Plus is very basic, but most people only need basic. Patrick C said, I'd use this for a secondary, and I'd use the hub with it if I did buy one. But again, Minisforum has so many other models, by the way. This isn't the only thing they make. So buying one that has more USB ports, they do offer that. We're just not looking at that today. Okay, how are we doing over here? Is this finished yet? These updates are massive. This says we are at 0% and 0%. Something seems hung up. Normally, if you let this sit long enough, it'll just solve itself. But I think what I'm going to do is I want to see what our crystal disk mark test is, even knowing it may be doing something in the background and our test results may not be accurate. We should at least be in the ballpark. Let's see. If it's Gen 4, we should be around no less than 5,000 megabytes per second on the reads and the writes. Somewhere around 5,000 is what I'm expecting. So getting 6,000, that's getting us a better than average Gen 4 OEM drive. Normally, a high-end Gen 4 drive will deliver up to 7,300, and it'll cost more money. So that's one of the best, when I say best, that's one of the fastest Gen 4 OEM drives we've ever seen from any manufacturer as a default. You know, this is what's included. I'm blown away by that. So it'll be curious to see what the write speeds look like. And remember, I was worried we might be not seeing the best numbers because of Windows updates happening in the background, but they also seem to be paused for some reason. And it may not be having any effect on our benchmarks. English is hard. There may not be any effect on our benchmarks if it's paused. I don't know, but 6,100 is much greater than I was expecting. We've seen some come in the high 4,000, right? And as an OEM Gen 4 drive, it's kind of what you get for the money. Most people can't tell the difference 4,000 to 6,000 to 12,000. It's all milliseconds. Only the most demanding users and benchmark chasers would ever notice that. So it's not that important, but it's impressive nonetheless. To me, anyway. Let me bring up camera 1 and put it in the corner so we kind of keep an eye on both things happening here. That right up over here like this. Joseph Hawkins said, Carey, this will bring a memory back for you. My first computer was a Dick Smith cat. I don't know what that means. Is that cursing? I had to add hardware to it. I think you guys had stuff in Australia, New Zealand that we did not have in the United States, because I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was involved with computers long before most people knew what a computer was. Like We're talking back in the day, you know, they had some Heath kits you could build yourself, things like the Sinclair computer where you could buy it and build it yourself for $99 or buy it pre-assembled for $149. That eventually became the Timex Sinclair. It was started to offer at places like Kmart. And at that time, you also had the TI-99 or TI-99A. Of course, the Commodore, the VIC-20, the color computer from TRS-80. But we can go even further back. Interestingly, me and Mara both had the same first computer before we even knew each other. A TRS-80 Model 1. Yeah. And that set me back over $400 of paper route money in 1980, 81, because I bought it used. I think they were $450 brand new. And I was happy to have it. All right, write speed's 5,300. I'm digging it. For an OEM drive, that's really, really impressive. Fry TV said his first PC was a VIC-20. You know, John says his first computer was an Apple II GS. My neighbor was the Apple guy, and I would go over his house and use his computer. He had the green screen, you know, and he would play Ultima, that Lord British, Richard Garriott. Wow, my mind. How do I remember such nonsense and I can't remember anything important? And I remember he had one of the first hard drives. I think it was 5 meg, and I think it was about this big, and it just seemed like they had a lot of money, my neighbors. So I'd go over their house and play with their investment. And that was an Apple II. And I think they upgraded to a 2 Plus and a 2E or a 2 Plus E. And then the monitor got to be an amber monitor. It went from green to orange. It was never in color. I don't think. And Ultima to me was not it didn't look like an interesting game. Like I would like, for me anyway, I just didn't get it. Never played it, never cared. Like, it just looks stupid. But, you know, as a teenager, I was really into more arcade games, especially Galaga, you know, the games that you would stand up to play. If you didn't have to stand up to play it, I wasn't interested. I'll put it to you that way. Except Spy Hunter. Spy Hunter, you'd sit down and drive the car. Yeah. Racing games. Anyway, let's see. Let me save these results. Let's go back over here. Full screen over here for me. That's the wrong one. I don't want to see myself that big. I'm not even that big in real life. All right, let's go over here. And let's save these results. File. Save image. Crystal disk mark. Let's put it on the desktop as a JPEG. That way, in the future, if I'm wondering, did I ever run this test? I'll have the results right there. With regards to being able to access our network, we will need to run just these 2 commands here that I've made a note of. And I have separate videos on this stuff, but effectively, we can just use this line. And this fixes accessing network shares without a login. And I'll go to PowerShell, run as administrator. And then we hit Control-V to paste, enter, and then hit yes to confirm. There's a little delay here, that's normal. And the other one should be instantaneous. That's the guest fallback. And that's just because if you're in my house and you're on my network, I don't need to put passwords up. Or trust me, you won't be in the house or on the network. So that fixes some security updates that Windows 11 implemented with an update back a couple months ago. And it's amazing how many people don't know this. So I'm done with that. I don't need it anymore. So in order to avoid confusing myself, I'm going to remove it. And then if we go, I like to install PC Manager, which is like a free Microsoft made PC Cleaner or C Cleaner alternative, and it's from Microsoft. Who's going to do a better job at keeping your operating system maintained? Microsoft or a third party that's trying to sell you something? This is free. I uncheck the box to restore the default settings. Microsoft always wants me to put default settings back. Watch those little sneaky guys. And then it'll say, hey, you've got memory use of this and temporary file use. Just hit the boost button. And for that matter, you can just go to set smart boost and turn that on. And you don't have to do it manually anymore. But you always can do a manual override. Then I'll run the deep cleanup and I won't check any of the boxes. I just go with all the safe items. But if you want to, you can check all the boxes and delete all your cookies and logins and have to enter all your passwords again. Depending if you want to clean up 4.6 gigs, you got to check all these boxes. I'm not checking any of those. So we're just going to remove the default to check boxes and you'll never notice anything that's missing because that's guaranteed junk. The other stuff, it's up to you to determine if it's junk. But Microsoft knows that stuff that it's checking there, guaranteed junk. But it won't total 4.6 gigs. It'll be less than that. This does not replace a disk cleanup, by the way, because if we run disk cleanup after this, it'll still find more temp files in other locations this doesn't check. But who needs to be that thorough? Anything's better than nothing. It actually freed up quite a bit, though, 3.7 out of 4.6. And then we just close that, and that'll run down here in the system tray, right? That's the icon. It's free. Windows 10 and 11. No issues running that, by the way. There's no bad side. There's no downside. What else was I going to do? Oh, disk cleanup. That's the old school way of doing things, but you'll see even after running that other disk cleanup, when I hit cleanup system files, which a lot of other content creators don't tell you about, you'll see there's actually, as I start checking all the boxes, this number here is going to get pretty big. That's going to be all of the old Windows updates and such. Now, by removing all those old Windows updates, I won't be able to uninstall any of them, but why would I want to? I'd like to be less secure and an easier target for Russian hackers. Yeah, let me do that. So it actually did a pretty good job of cleaning the bulk of it. There's still just a little bit left, and I'll hit OK on that and choose to delete the files. In the meantime, how are our Windows updates doing? Oh, it's finally getting somewhere. So you can see multitasking. You don't have to sit and wait like I usually do. When I'm doing these videos, you or I could be doing other things. I mean, that ain't going to happen any faster, but at least we can do other things while it's doing the other updates. Did that make any sense at all? I feel like I just said that does this and don't worry about it. What is that and what is this and what is it? I think you got what I was getting at there. I definitely could have said that clearer. All right, let's see. Has anybody here bought a mini PC that they didn't like from any manufacturer, any model? Has anybody had a mini PC that was total junk? I'm just curious. And if so, why do you consider it junk? Like where did it fail in your opinion or in your expectation? I love to hear about your actual experiences. Quite often what I'm hearing are your anxieties. What if I do this? What if I do that? Like, just do it. Do it or don't. And if you have a problem after you've done it, then we can help you. But we cannot help you decide. You have to decide this on your own. And we can't read into a crystal ball and tell you what's going to happen. You have to do that and tell us what happened. You understand? Because we don't know you, and we don't know your environment, and we don't know all of the variables regarding your specific computer. It's not like anybody else's in most cases, both in hardware and software. So those questions are, what are you going to do if, or what happens if I do this, or is this going to make something better? You need to do that. And if you end up regretting it or running into a problem, which you likely won't, should you need help, we can help you with real, actual conditions. But if the condition is only in your head, I'm not that kind of technician. I don't have a prescription pad. I mean, I could write you a prescription. I'm not quite sure it's going to get you anything. Hell, if I had a prescription pad, I'd be writing myself a prescription. Just saying. John P. says he's loving his GMK Tech M6. And he says, I've not had a bad mini PC experience because I watch your reviews. And thank you. Okay. I appreciate that, but that's not what I asked. Has anybody bought a mini PC that feels like it was junk from any manufacturer, any model, ever since we started doing these mini PCs in 2013 with the original Intel NUC i3, which, by the way, still works today. We don't use it, but there's nothing wrong with it other than it's lacking the resources we need. Obviously, it's not Windows 11 compatible. I think the reason this cleanup is taking so long is behind the scenes, it's installing the update. So this thing is working its tail off, and I really don't hear it. This thing is dead quiet. And I think that's because they have a larger fan, it's my understanding, on the CPU. And then that additional fan that's keeping the NVMe cool. And there are heat sinks on the NVMe and over the spare M.2 slot. Actual heat sinks that are attached to the lid. So if you're one of those people that has an unreasonable anxiety about computer heat that isn't really a problem that exists in the real world except online, then this is a great remedy for your anxiety, because they have gone over the top with the cooling on this. In my opinion, it's way more than they needed to. So you take that for whatever it's worth. And then the fact that they're not charging you extra for that heatsink or that additional fan, that's built into that $300 price, or $309. Scott and Joseph Hawkins say, no, they haven't had any bad mini PC experiences from any manufacturer. Bad, you read Amazon reviews, and you gotta wonder, is it the mini PC manufacturers that are deserving of the one-star reviews, or is it unreasonable people or potentially competitors trying to ding the competition because either the end user is unreasonable and intolerant, or are they actually working for the manufacturer of a competitor trying to make their competitor's product seem less desirable? And that's why you got to get one yourself if you're curious, because you and I could buy the exact same product at the exact same time for the same price and from the same place, and I might love it and you might hate it. We could wonder, would I like it? Nobody can answer that. So when you have one in front of you and you experience it, then you can say what you like or what you dislike. And it doesn't mean you're right, other than for you. I'm fascinated by what gauge of value people use, because very rarely do two people share the same values down the line. They'll have some overlap, but very rarely do two people, even if they agree they like it, will like it for all the same reasons. They'll have a couple of reasons they're like, yeah, that's important to me, but it might be like a list of 6 things, and 3 of them will overlap, and then 3 will be different on this guy's person or this person's side, and 3 will be different on the other person's side. And I come from somebody, when I sell this to a customer, coming from somebody who has to support it, make sure my customers are getting a good value, that they're not being overcharged, and that it's not going to make me look like a fool if the product is bad and I recommended it. You know who the customer is going to call? You know who the customer is going to expect to fix it or replace it for free? Do you know how I stay in business? You know how anybody stays in business? So I acknowledge that the things I want are probably far more, like there's an emphasis on certain things for me, like support and value, that you guys might dismiss. Some of you, it's not you might go, this guy's crazy. What does he care about that stuff? Because I'm doing something you're probably not doing. That is, I'm spending somebody else's money, and if what I provide to them and what they've purchased isn't what I said it would be, guess who's responsible? And if I walk away from my responsibilities, what are the odds they're ever going to come back or recommend me to their friends ever again? And if that happens, how do you pay the bills if you've got no more money coming in? other than to just shut your business down and go to work for somebody else. See what I'm getting at? So I acknowledge that when I'm looking at certain things with computers, I'm coming at it from a very unique perspective. And I'm wondering, what is your unique perspective in contrast? Because they're all valuable. One is not more important to another. Mine are important to me. Yours are important to you. All right, so our disk cleanup finished, and let's take a look at our Windows Update status here. I still don't have the big window popping up telling me it's time to reboot. That's one of the checkboxes I turned on earlier because I like to see that, so I don't have to go digging for it. But I'm just curious, you know, what our progress has been anyway. So I'm going to go look. So when you see the word cumulative, you guys do know what cumulative means if you look that word up in the dictionary, right? So what are these cumulative updates? Are a bunch of previous updates along with likely some new ones. And instead of offering them to you a la carte, they've packaged them all up in one big update. And that way it ensures that you don't have to miss any. And if you're updating a brand new computer like we have today, we don't see 75 updates. We see fewer because they probably jammed 50 updates into this one cumulative. They might have jammed another 20 into this other cumulative, where prior they used to be individual updates. Now they're not. This reduces the amount of time, the bandwidth, and just makes it a lot easier to keep up with the updates when you're updating something that hasn't been updated in a while. And as a result, these are large files you're downloading, and they contain multiple updates within this one file. So a cumulative update is many updates previously released, sometimes along with a couple new updates, plural, all put into one update package. Think of it like a service pack. And you know service packs are big and take a while to install. So if you're wondering, why does this update take longer than others? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it is Microsoft didn't send you the memo, okay, that they've changed the way they're releasing updates, and this makes a lot more sense, and it's in your benefit. Well, it's in Microsoft's benefit too. And it's, again, it's that evolution, it's progress. Smokey of Stormwind said, I assume the system has an APU, so yes. The graphics card that's built into this Ryzen is actually pretty darn powerful considering. Like, I'm not going to say it's as powerful as a discrete card. However, if we go back to the Amazon page and we look at the specifications, I'm sure they tell us exactly which graphics card is in here. Let's take a look together. It will support 8K output at 60 Hertz. DisplayPort 1.4, which is what it's got, can achieve 4K display at 120 Hertz. That's pretty darn good. It should tell us which Radeon usually it's in this first line. I don't see it here. See more product details. Sometimes they include this information, and let's go back over to Minisforum's site. Maybe they give us more detailed information here. So if we're looking at this model, which is right here, you get a free coffee cup if you order that. So 311 with a free coffee cup for the same configuration we have here, offered with a US power plug or an Australian power plug. They should tell us high-speed network, compact size, power delivery on the USB 4 connection. We're getting closer. I feel it. That's all CPU. Here it is. So the AMD Radeon is which model? Of course, that's the RAM. Again, it's soldered on. The two M.2 slots are both Gen 4. And you could actually go faster than 7,000. You can hit 7,300. They're underselling this. Low noise. Okay, well, they're not really pushing this Radeon card. I would be. Let's see right down here. GPU. Yeah, they're not telling us which model. So then what I would do is go back over to the machine here. And let me go full screen on this. There I am. And I know this says you can restart now, but I want to wait until this is done. That's my preference. I'm going to right click and go to the device manager, and we'll just take a look at what graphics card drivers installed. Doesn't tell us there either. So then here's the other way you would determine. Lots of different ways with computers, by the way, to get to the solution you want. You can open a browser, and if we know which CPU this is, they're all the same. So if we look up the specifications of the CPU, we'll likely find a website that will tell us about the APU. So Ryzen 5, and I can't remember the model already. I've already forgotten it. Let me go back to system. 7545U. So I type in 7545U and APU. Let's type in GPU. Let's just do that and see what it says. So this is the AMD Radeon. It was actually right on the first thing. AMD Radeon 740M integrated graphics. So what does that mean? So if you want to see, by like a comparison, AMD Radeon 740M versus, I don't know, gaming, you can see a lot of people online have done the research. It says it has lower performance than a 3060 and a 1650. However, and it also has fewer cores than a Radeon 680 or 780. Ooh, this is good. What else do we have? It is not suitable for heavy gaming like Cyberpunk or Starfield. But that, at a $300 price point, I don't think anything is suitable for heavy gaming. Nothing on the market at $300 or even $400. I think you've got to exceed $500 if you want to do heavy gaming. And if you want to compare it to a 3060, we can see it's a pretty significant difference, except you're having to buy this for another $200, $300, right? And this is already included in the price. I mean, this alone will cost you nearly as much as the mini PC, if not more. And you couldn't add this if you wanted to. Yeah, this says $286. That's damn near the price of the whole computer. So anyway, it is not gaming focused, but it will absolutely do some gaming, just so you know. And if you're curious about seeing gaming tests done on this, just look on YouTube for other reviews, because it's very common for most reviewers to run some games. I don't know what the odds are that the few games they test are ones you play, but I suppose it's possible. Out of 10,000 games, they might show half a dozen, and maybe that means something to you. But if your primary concern is gaming, I wouldn't be looking at a $300 price point unless your gaming is like retro gaming or League of Legends, some older games. Or, like I said, it'll play the latest Doom. It's just you're only going to get 30 frames per second out of it, and not at the highest resolution, but very playable and looks good, at least to me. What do I know, right? For a lot of the young kids, I'm just an old man that is out of touch. If by that they mean I work for a living and don't have time and spare money to invest in playing a bunch of games all day, then they're right. I mean, I'd love to trade places with them. I could sit home and spend my parents' money and game all day, but it actually does much better in gaming than I was expecting it to. And I guess that's all I'm trying to say. If you look at the actual gaming performance of this and how the games look and play, They look pretty damn good to me. But they're also not cranking up all the settings. The fact that it'll play Doom smoothly shocks me. Like the latest Doom, whose name I keep forgetting. I'm going to Google this now. The Dark Ages, yeah, which looks fantastic, by the way. I'd love to play it, I just don't have any time. I prefer playing this other game called What's Wrong with the Computer, and I overcome the challenges and obstacles, and by leveling up I get a check, versus doing all the same work but then paying to do it. Gaming is just basically working and not getting paid for your work. I'm not aware of it being any other way. But, you know, what's worse is people pay for the games. So you're paying to go to work. But that's not too far-fetched from a job. A job, you're going to have challenges. You may have to redo things over and over until you get it right. But at the end of the day, you get paid. So I understand entertainment, I do, but I would rather sit back and mindlessly watch a TV show than to continue focusing my brain on troubleshooting, problem solving, when I've done it all day for a living. I'm going to spend money now to do it some more? No. Nope. If I feel like gaming, I'll break out the arcade game. Again, I prefer games that you stand up to play. You old fuddy-duddy. I know. Kenneth Brown says, I bought an Ace Magician AD15. I had it for a little over a year when the CPU fan stopped working. But it worked fine right up till then. But I wouldn't add a negative review for that. You can buy those fans off of Amazon and eBay and do it yourself. They're not that difficult. You don't have to take the heatsink off. You just take the fan off. I don't recommend breaking the seal of the thermal compound because you'll never get it as good as they've got it. But changing the fan is relatively painless and inexpensive. What else we got in the chat room? Still waiting on this update. Almost done. Ross Bittner says, Galaga. Yeah, I love me some Galaga, man. That game just never gets old, and you'll never win it, by the way. Let's see. Get that open. Oh, I'm behind. I see. That screen share is just falling behind. All right, well, we just crossed over our 2-hour mark here, and I like to kind of limit these around here, but at 2 hours. Sometimes we go a little over, sometimes we go a lot over. Kind of depends on our interaction and whether or not it's useful to anybody. And let me just take a quick look one more time. I lost my screen. There it is. We are at, finally, yeah, 100%. So in just a minute, I should get the restart notification big and bold on my screen. Like I said, that's when I go under advanced options. You see me checking those boxes. One of those boxes does that, so I'm not wondering. Just watch. There it is right there. So it brings it to my attention. And I don't have to restart right this second. I can say, you know, I can choose not now. But I'm going to go ahead and restart it now and get it out of the way. And like I say, inside of this, you're not going to be upgrading any RAM. So they do sell a version with more RAM if you feel like 16 gigs is insufficient. The reason we add RAM is because mechanical drive swap files are so slow. We're not using mechanical drives anymore. So most people won't notice any difference from 16 gig to 32 gig. If you feel like you will, you pay an extra 30 bucks for the box and it'll come with the 32 gig. Again, I've really not met anybody on a regular basis, it's pretty rare, that can show me that they're using in use 32 gigs or more of RAM at any given time, other than some big heavy applications like CAD or Adobe Premiere, things like that. But then why would you be running CAD or Adobe Premiere that cost more than $300 on a $300 computer? It doesn't make any sense. So, you know, you could also bus 20 children in your 2-seat Mazda Miata. You probably shouldn't. It may even be illegal. But that's why they make a minivan and a school bus and an SUV with 3 rows. I'm just saying, using the wrong tool for the job and then blaming the tool, I think the tool you might need if you fit that category is a mirror. So for what this is, it is exceeding what I think I would expect at this price. I feel like you're getting more than your money's worth on this. And if you disagree and you know of another machine made by anybody that sells for less than this and gives you just as much or more in return, please make us aware of it. Otherwise, comparing this to nothing and saying it's not good enough doesn't make any sense. You've got to have some comparison. So if we compare it to a $500 computer, that's not fair. See what I'm getting at? And so I'm very confident, and you know, Minisforum doesn't need to pay me to promote them because these are products I use in real life and I will continue to use them so long as they continue to offer this kind of a value. I'm not 100% behind all their decisions, especially those rubber feet hiding screws. I've made that very clear, but overall, it's a very minor criticism. If you're watching a YouTube channel and they have no criticisms, or the opposite, they have nothing good to say, they're biased and they're not providing all the information to you. For all I know, I'm not providing all the information to you, but I do try to cover both sides, the good and the bad. And for me, over and over and over again, the good far outweigh the bad on this brand. They've been regularly consistent with that. And I just want to share that concept with you, whether or not that adds any value to you. Doesn't matter. I guess I'm done with this. Take that out and put it back. And I want to thank the folks at Minisforum for sending us this unit. And then we also have, I have ordered on Amazon an MSA2. And the MSA2 is one of those workstations. In fact, if we go back over to Amazon, let me pull up the MSA2 for those of you not familiar. Now, other content creators have already reviewed this a month or two ago. I haven't gotten my hands on one yet. They're pretty pricey. However, they also sold out on the high-end model. They make a couple different models of this. So looking at the model that I'm looking at is the 9955 Ryzen 9. I mean, that is a high-end CPU. I can already tell you there's a couple things I don't like. I don't think this has USB 4. I don't think it has Gen 5 NVMe. I could be wrong. And the 10 gig is only SFP plus instead of Ethernet, which bothers me, you know, traditional Keystone Jack Ethernet. So it's not perfect out of the box. I can already, even before having my hands on it, see a couple of things that I would like to see at this price point, but that doesn't mean it's not worth looking at. So this version is a bare bone version, meaning you have to put in your own RAM, your own NVMe drive, in your own operating system. I bought one that's already, I don't know where it is. Let me go back to the main Amazon page and see if there's another link. I bought one already equipped. See, this is the 7945. This is a lesser, lower end CPU, but it's not a low end CPU, but compared to the 9955, you know, that's top of the line. So I'm just looking to see if it's being offered here as the 9955. Yeah, this looks like what I ordered. That's about the right price, $1,136. That includes 64 gigs of RAM that you I believe you can upgrade that RAM. A 1 terabyte solid state drive, NVMe. It's got 2 USB-Cs. I don't know if they're USB 4. And I don't think we're going to get this for like 3 weeks. It's, what does it say? Free delivery the end of July. So yeah, we're not even at the end of June yet. So I think we're going to be waiting on this. But these are estimates. I've had stuff arrive, 3 weeks earlier. But as soon as we get it, that's coming up. And I can't wait. Yeah, it's regular SO-DIMM. It's not LP. It's not low power. So you can upgrade the RAM. Anyway, as I mentioned, we don't get everything for free from Minisforum. We've purchased this one, and this goes along with the MSA1, the previous model we reviewed, and the MS01, which is the Intel model. I think it would make sense that there will be an MS02, which will be a second generation of the Intel version, which is currently the MS01. So the 01 is Intel, the A1 is AMD, the A2 is the next generation of that workstation computer, which is interesting because the Intel one came out first, then the AMD one came out, but now the AMD one's getting the refresh first. And then the Intel one, I'm hoping, will have a refresh next because, more power. What do I need that power for? I don't know. And sometimes, I'm as guilty as the next person. I can't really justify it. I just think it's really cool. And it's still cheaper than many home-built computers that aren't nearly as powerful in spending that kind of money. But you choose what appeals to you for whatever reasons. And me, I like a little bit of everything. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. I want to thank everybody for hanging out. And thanks to Mara, of course, for all the work she does in the background, doing our channel administration. Thank you for all the members who make these videos possible. I think Friday, will it be Friday? We can get back to putting together the computer with that Trix cooler on it. I think. Still bickering with ASRock on that whole motherboard situation, and I am not satisfied with the answers they're giving me. I think it's a load of hooey. Yeah, I said it. Hooey. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. But I would love for them to prove me wrong and show me some official documents, which they can't show me because of some mystery NDA for some mystery document that I bet doesn't exist. Like I said, that might be something for Gamers Nexus to look into because I think he's got the wherewithal and experience to dig down into this and find the truth because I don't think we're getting the truth here. Then we've got the TerraMaster. I want to revisit that NAS. We've got the Ugreen NAS coming in, and I think we have a couple Synologies, which my understanding require Synology drives, but I want to verify if that's true and if there's a workaround. Didn't we just talk about workarounds causing problems months later? Okay, but I'll tell you ahead of time, if you follow the workaround and the workaround works, you could have some consequences of needing another workaround. All right, so I mean, that's just the nature of workarounds in general. And that should be assumed. I shouldn't have to tell you. But be that as it may, I don't want to appear to be a hypocrite. And, I follow the same rules as I am demonstrating here because I have a business to run. And the business requires me to follow those rules if I want to maintain a business. I mean, if you know how to maintain a business and not follow any rules, I'd love to know how you do it because that sounds like a thieves' paradise. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks again to everybody for hanging out, members and non-members alike. Thank you for being a part of the community. Thank you for your support, your contributions. Without you guys, much of this content would not be possible. A shout out to our friend Charlie Purdy, of course, to our friend Buster, as always, for their very generous contributions. Frankie B. and Oystein and many of others, Mark Gaines, who support us here, Mortant as well. And we look forward to seeing you again. Yeah, I should be back tomorrow because I won't have any construction going on, so I need to take advantage of that. And again on Friday, we will start at the regular time, 1 o'clock tomorrow. So hopefully you'll join us then. As a reminder, we have those discounted Windows and Office license keys that are real, legitimate, and supported for 6 months. So if you don't want to take a risk buying some cheap product key somewhere where they make the sale and then abandon you, and too bad, so sad if you have any problems. Maybe you got something stolen, maybe you got something that's sketchy. Get it from a real legitimate seller that backs up what they sell, and you don't risk anything, and it's cheap. And with the additional 30% off coupon codes, it's even cheaper. I don't make money if you buy it, right? If you buy it or you don't buy it. I go out of my way to find these deals for you. If you think there's some underlying thing that if you buy it, I benefit, I'd like to know, because I haven't been getting, somebody's getting the benefit. That's going to wrap it up for me. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Links for the Minisforum and their sale that's going on, as a reminder, that's all in our video notes. And again, I'm not the first person to review this, so if you want to see gaming done on this, a couple other content reviewers have already done that. And absolutely check their stuff out. That helps you make a decision. That'll wrap it up for me. I will see you all, I feel like I said this already, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.